Thank you. I'm Ed McCann. I'm the founder of Writers Read and your host for today's show. And Writers Read creates performance opportunities for writers, whether established or emerging, and whether published or not, because at Writers Read, it is all about the craft of writing and a writer's ability to present an engaging personal story in 650 words and tell it on our stage in 5 minutes. Our mission is to create performance opportunities for writers, and the stories that we present on stage can be seen on our YouTube channel, read in our publications, and heard on our regular podcast. Now, we are delighted to return again to Kingston to present this show at St. John's Episcopal Church, which is this place in this valued community hub. The theme of today's show is inheritance. And inheritance is rarely just about the china or the wedding ring or the real estate. And beyond the fine print of a will lies the true substance of what we actually inherit from those who have gone before, whether it is the cadence of a voice, the stubbornness of a chin, or the unfinished business of a previous generation. And the stories you're about to hear peel back the layers of our collective history to see what remains when the past is finally put to words. And we begin with writer Anthony Murphy. Originally from Lancashire, England, Anthony has worked as a postman, a roadie, and a producer of live poetry. He has performed spoken word for 15 years across the UK and US, including several Writers Read shows. He is the author of the novel Shiftless and several poetry chapbooks. He's an active member of the Irish American Writers and Artists and a regular contributor to their Manhattan salons. When not writing, he brews nourishing ales and shares nonsense poetry at his daughter's school. He has 3 children and 2 dogs, all of whom he describes as, quote, lovely in their own way. And opening today's inheritance event, Anthony shares a personal story about the only thing his father left behind, a nervous border collie named Skittles. Please welcome Anthony Murphy.
When I was 18, I attempted suicide. I had my stomach pumped and was out of it in a hospital bed for 2 nights, hallucinating and still high. It was just me and my dad back then. My mum had taken my younger brother when she remarried. My older brother was at university. Dad didn't come to the hospital. I was evaluated by the staff psychiatrist and discharged. I skulked home, sullen adolescent that I was, to face Dad's disappointment or rage or both. Instead, I got tired resignation. You should kill yourself slowly, he said, swigging his wine, and enjoy yourself while you're doing it. So that's where I get it from. 20 years later, Dad died, age 62, not altogether unexpectedly, as he had switched from brandy to vodka and was falling in the street so often the ambulance drivers gave him a rewards card. The police knock on my door wasn't a shock, so I relieved the nervy young constable of his miserable duty, telling him I already know. Dad didn't have much. No car, no stash, no cash, no will. There was nothing in his flat that we wanted. There were only debts and a funeral to pay for. Oh, and a dog. Skittles was a red and white border collie. He had alerted the neighbor to my dad's stasis and reek. He was a fit, loyal, intelligent dog, but he was nervous, skittish. With dogs, it's not nominative determinism, as the names come after the traits. Skittles was the last link to the old man, having been with Dad since a pup. My older brother hadn't room for a pet. I was just divorced and had no permanent address. So we drove down from Lancashire to my younger brother's house with the dog. Skittles, amazed by all the zipping lights outside the car window, it was his first road trip. That night, I took Skittles out to water the corner, and the dog bolted. I swear he was heading in the right direction to get back home, But before I lost him in the traffic, I threw myself on the ground and yowled in pain. I thrashed about in the dirt and cried, "Oh, help me, help." I don't know why I thought of it. I just knew I couldn't run and catch the hound. Sure enough, Skittles came snuffling back to see if I was all right. He nuzzled at me, and I lay still, and I let him investigate. I mean, we were hardly acquainted, even though I'd met him a few times over the years. I grabbed his collar, calmed down his squirming, and got him back to the house. The dog had to let physical Dad go. The smell of the old man would dissipate in time. We understood that he was nowhere now, but Skittles would have padded the streets of the village looking for his master if he could, nosing into the turf accountants and the 3 public houses, sniffing the surrounding moor for him. We took Skittles to the funeral, and then I had to go back to work. My younger brother hadn't been with our dad much growing up. At least he hadn't witnessed that death wish or listened to crazy advice. It seemed right that he got to share a living part of our dad. Skittles settled into his new environment with a gentler master now and a mischievous cat called Red as a friend. My mum would often visit and said that Skittles looked at her funny and had her dad's eyes. My mum believed such things. When Dad's dog died, my brother had me on the face phone. Not something I enjoy at the best of times. I saw Skittles' last shuddering breath, a faint finality, and our surprise bequest was gone. All that was left of Dad was each other.
Irene O'Garden is an award-winning writer across nearly every medium, from stage and screen to children's books and literary magazines. Her play Little Heart premiered in 2023, leading to a new commission, Alice in Widowland, opening in 2026, and her off-Broadway hit, Women on Fire, played to sold-out houses and earned a Lucille Lortel nomination. A Pushcart Prize winner, Irene has authored 2 memoirs, a book of poetry, and a collection of essays, and she says, the best part of writing is that once a piece is finished, you never have to clean it, repair it, or paint it. Irene returns to our stage today with a story of irritation transformed into devotion, titled What You Left Me. Please give a warm welcome to Irene O'Garden.
Painful maiden sister, hard for me to love, gentle but closed, obesity crippled, chronically, clinically depressed, a recluse, loving isolation as you'd love a married man, knowing there's no future in it, unable to resist its cruel comfort. The holiday call, the wedding of a nephew, a family funeral, rare points of contact with you leave me scrambling for common ground. The truth? You irritate me. Your favorite activity? Sitting in your bathrobe all day long, blabbing away. Get dressed, get going, I want to say, shifting in my chair. Your conversation bores me, which makes me feel ashamed. The fluffy bunny thing, the kitten thing, the cornball sense of humor, what you bought, what you're gonna buy, your latest library mystery. That day an Air Force plane flies over, thank heavens they're keeping us safe, you say. Your fearfulness and lack of trust in life exasperate me, which makes me annoyed with myself. You can't help who you are, but I can't help who I am either. Atop this sopping mess, glops of guilt that I love our little sis better. She who stays in touch, who listens, laughs, and asks the juicy questions. I know you long for this closeness, and I can't give it to you. You make me dislike myself, which of course makes me dislike you. It becomes increasingly clear as you brink 70, though, that the plaques and tangles that took down our mother, her aunt, and her grandmother are sprouting in your brain. At our aunt's funeral, inhaling your incontinence, I volunteer to manage your affairs. Big Bro and his wife have helped you for years. Little Sis helped Mom through her plaques and tangles and her passage off this earth, and nursed another brother, too. Little Bro, the lawyer, says he'll help me. It's our turn. None of this had I ever done. Addressing the squalor of hoarding, managing finances, fielding repeated phone calls of fury and depression, arranging a will, a trust, an estate. None of this had I done. But as the years and the demands unfold, I learn. Certainly there are frustrations, but my shame, my annoyance, dislike of myself wash away in the rush of tasks. Structures of devotion rise up in me. Suddenly, so many ways to love. Arranging meals on wheels and art lessons for you. Singing Christmas carols to calm you. Sending the fluffiest, bunniest cornball greeting card. Because I fly west more often, I see our siblings and their kids more often. This is all a way to love them too. We all grow closer. When the tangles tighten, we move you to assisted living near Big Bro and his family. I admire your courage as you surrender your beloved dogs and your love of isolation. It gives me the courage to refurbish and to sell your house. I begin to see the righteousness at work. 2 months after I was born, Dad had a heart attack. Mom visited him every day for weeks in the hospital and left you at 12 years old to cook and care and clean for 3 younger brothers and bathe and bottle and change 2-month-old me. Even when Dad recovered, Mom often left me in your care. You were an early mother to me. Now I'm a late mother to you. When you gently passed, you left an impressive bequest. I had the thrill of telling my siblings that thanks to your clever investments, you bequeathed $60,000 to each one of us. The money was wonderful fun, but enfolded in euphoria lay your deeper legacy to me. Our closer family, my newfound confidence in my own abilities, and all those sudden ways I learned to love. And a smile and a tear whenever a cornball fluffy bunny hops out of the greeting card rack.
Mihai Grunfeld was born in Cluj, Romania, where he lived with his Holocaust survivor parents until he was 18, when, in a daring escape, he and his brother traveled to Czechoslovakia. This was the beginning of a long journey that took him to Israel, Italy, Sweden, and Canada in search of a home in the West. Eventually, he settled in the US, obtained his PhD from UC Berkeley, and he recently retired from Vassar College, where he taught Spanish and Latin American literature. Mihai's autobiography is called Leaving, Memories of Romania, and his contribution to today's event is a personal story of reclaiming an inheritance called The Long Journey Home. I'm pleased to welcome back Mihai Grunfeld.
I feel Mama beside me, breathing quietly. On my right, Tata's bed is empty. At the foot of the bed, a faint light illuminates a familiar scene. Tata, in pajamas, standing by the desk, holding a thick, tattered prayer book. His shoulders are draped with a black and white striped prayer shawl, a fedora on his head, and on his forehead, a little black square box. It's still dark. A lit candle helps him read. Yet, judging by the speed of his whisper, he likely knows the prayer by heart. He's completely absorbed in prayer. Sometimes he moistens his finger to turn a page or bends forward rhythmically to a melody only he can hear. I watch, not really understanding. He prays every day. He also goes to the synagogue once a week, but neither he nor Mama ever spoke about God, religion, being Jewish, or the family who died in the Holocaust. They don't want to talk about it. It must be too painful. Only once, when I asked Tata about God, did he say with hesitation that he thinks God exists. There must be something bigger than us, otherwise our suffering as Jewish people doesn't make sense. I'm 10 years old and I don't believe in God, so I don't really understand his explanation. Mama also survived Auschwitz. She told me she stopped believing in God there. But on Friday evenings, if she's not sick, something magical happens. With her head covered by a colorful kerchief, she strikes a match, lights 2 Shabbos candles, and slowly circles her hands over the flames, murmuring a prayer I don't understand. When she covers her eyes, sighs deeply, and falls silent, there's a quiet sadness in the air. Then she says, "Let's eat." 65 years later, I sit in front of my altar, my shoulders covered by a Jewish prayer shawl that my wife gifted me for the bar mitzvah I organized at home on my 75th birthday. Smoke rises from a sandalwood incense stick, perfuming the air. On the wall in front of me hangs a Tibetan tanka. In the center of my altar, a small bronze Buddha sits quietly. On its right, my Zen Buddhist teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, dressed in brown, looks at me from a photo, while on its left, my Austrian mysticism teacher, Thomas Hubel, smiles kindly. My grandparents, Hermina and Emmanuel, are looking at me from a picture I recovered when I returned to Cluj to bury my father. Emmanuel wears a suit and tie and a fedora. Hermina smiles, dressed in black, with modest earrings and a pretty hairdo. From another, older photo, much more austere, my great-grandparents, Regina and Jacob, are watching. I meditate every morning. I recite a Hebrew prayer before I put my prayer shawl on. I follow my breath and become aware of everything around me and inside. I speak to my ancestors on the altar, thanking them for their support. Or I simply speak to God, a God I cannot visualize, whom I sometimes call Tunkashale, a Lakota word for grandfather that my teacher Morningstar taught me a long time ago. As I meditate, I'm sometimes visited by my father's prayer, by my father praying alone in the early morning, or by my mother welcoming the Shabbos. I speak to them, thanking them for giving me life, despite their experiences in the camps. Even though they didn't teach me about God, I thank them for passing their faith on to me. I sense a circle surrounding us, the three of us, connected in our reverence for the mystery. Not even the Holocaust could sever this connection, despite my parents' decision not to teach me about being Jewish. For me, it has been a long journey home to embrace my father's and my mother's faith, a true gift from them. Thank you, Tata. Thank you, Mama.
Veteran educator Daphne Gregory Thomas was featured in the documentary Learning for Life for her innovative work with neurodivergent students. She transitioned to creative prose through Memorial Sloan Kettering's Visible Ink program, and her work now appears in Reflections Literary Journal and various anthologies. Winner of Maine's 2024 Joy of the Pen Award, Daphne traveled from Kennebunk today, very nearly winning our Longest Commute Award. So she's the runner-up today. But she is currently writing a memoir centered on her career-long advocacy for marginalized and neurodivergent students. Daphne joins us today to share The Name, a story suggesting that a name is not a curse, but a protective inheritance of resilience and deep roots. Please give a warm welcome to Daphne Gregory Thomas.
Mythologies are filled with stories of the unlucky number 13. Zeus was the 13th god, too powerful for his own good. Eve offered the apple to Adam on the 13th day. Judas was the 13th man invited to the Last Supper. Born on the 13th, I was unlucky enough to inherit a name that was my own curse, Daphne. When I start school, a freckled boy hears the teacher call my name and asks, "What's your name?" Daphne. Kathy? No, Daphne. Taffy? No, Daphne. I know, he smirks. Daffy, like Daffy Duck, bringing the whole class to stitches. Why did my parents name me Daphne? Uncommon, hard to pronounce, a name that makes people squint and giggle. I fume at them for this incurable affliction. Why did you name me that? It's a Greek tradition. You were named after your grandmother. Your brother was named after your grandfather. He's not complaining. My brother's name is Bill. Though I resent the name, my grandmother is someone I revere. Each morning she puts on her house dress and inside shoes. She grabs a feather duster, flaps it like a wing to start her day. She's a bird in flight, upending all debris from the day before, humming a low melody as if calling to a long-lost time in her past. A maestro of the morning, she shoos away all in her path, including her chatty granddaughter who asks too many questions. Once the duster is tucked away, the first movement ends and the poetry begins. Red-chipped mixing bowls, an old broom handle for rolling phyllo dough, and dented baking pans appear. I push a chair to the counter, stand on it, and hope she will not think me in the way. She pulls the chair closer, tells me in broken English, "You watch, you learn." The symphony continues with her humming.
Spinach and cheese, scented rice, honey and walnuts surround us. Like lyrics, there are sweet morsels like baklava to taste, the savory scents of spanakopita and bread on the rise, intoxicating aromas of her history, and because she lets me watch, my future. Eventually, I muster my courage, wanting to know more about her and the name we both bear. And I ask, when did you come to America? Why? How did you get your name? She pauses. Her head shake and downward glance tell me the subject is closed. I approach my father, a reticent man, and he tells me her story in his matter-of-fact way. She was sent to America as a young girl for an arranged marriage. Her mother was long gone, and her father was ailing. He did it to keep her safe. Her name is a tradition passed down to her, and now to you. Unsatisfied, I turn to my mother, who knows of my name discontent by my tearful outbursts after being teased in school. Though money is tight, she buys a secondhand book filled with the great mythologies of my heritage. She turns the pages and finds the story of the naiad nymph Daphne. One fateful day, the powerful god Apollo flies over the forest in his golden chariot, his heart pierced by the arrow of Cupid at the first sight of her. Fleeing, she turns to her river father to be saved. She feels her feet take root on the bank. Sunlit, her upraised arms turn into branches, her fingers to leaves, white blossoms appearing throughout, saving her from Apollo. Devastated, Apollo honors his love for her by crowning all who win challenges at ancient Olympic Games with a wreath of leaves from the tree of Daphne. The story of my name gives me pause. I think of my grandmother, her father saving her from being alone and fearful, sending her to an unknown land to grow new roots and branches, to wear the crown of family. For the first time in my life, I'm grateful for the name I've been given to honor her. It's no longer a curse wrought by the 13th day of my birth, but instead a name to keep me safe. People still ask me where I got my name. I tell them I inherited it from my grandmother, so given because of the ancient Greek myth of a brave girl who saved herself from being taken, always remembering to honor her roots, wave her branches, and face the sun unafraid.
Before the Washington Post called him a natural raconteur, and he became a TikTok sensation in high heels, Jamie Brickhouse told stories mostly from bar stools. Now sober, he is the author of the critically acclaimed memoir, Dangerous When Wet, a memoir of booze, sex, and my mother, and a contributor to the New York Times. A powerhouse of the stage, Jamie is a Moth Grand Slam champion and a 6-time Story Slam winner who tours 4 acclaimed shows. A TEDx speaker and former voice actor for Beavis and Butthead, Jamie lives in New York with his husband, where he is finishing his second memoir, I Favor My Daddy, A Tale of Two Sissies. Today, he shares Roberto of Acapulco, a piece adapted from that work about discovering his truest inheritance in his father's hidden, colorful life. Please welcome Jamie Brickhouse.
Roberto of Acapulco hung at the back of my father Earl's closet like a star waiting to be discovered. I never saw Earl wear Roberto, as the label read on this dazzling Mexican shirt. I'd never even seen it. It's a swinging, thick cotton white shirt with wide lapels, 3/4 sleeves, and a deep V-neck bordered with embroidered flowers of turquoise, red, fuchsia, orange, and purple. I'd carbon date it circa 1963, 2 years before he married Mom. I decided to donate all his clothes, too conservative for me. But not that shirt. It was just my style. Almost 50, I realized I was the same age as Dad when he caught 15-year-old me, his only child, and junior to his senior, saying cheese as 2 bikini-clad men snapped my photo on an Acapulco beach, and to whom I'd lose my virginity later that night. I couldn't wait to wear it to my welcome home party in New York after my 6-week stay down in Texas, sorting through Earl's house after his death at 83. Along with the shirt, I also wore his gold rope chain necklace and my own jeans. The only thing missing were Earl's worn huaraches. I entered the party with my partner Michael, raw and wobbly, still in mourning and spent from reckoning with Earl's stuff. I felt like a dancer recovering from an injury, and it was my first night back on stage. Roberto of Acapulco was a magic shirt, like the red shoes. I danced into the room as Earl would have, arms raised, fingers snapping, a feeling no pain grin. He loved a party. Girl, that's one of the gayest shirts I've ever seen you wear. Stephen, the host of the party, said, "Is that new?" "It was my daddy's. Isn't it fantastic?" Everyone gathered around for a fashion show. Some people thought they'd already seen me wear it. In fact, I have a white linen floral paisley shirt of the same colors that I called my Acapulco shirt. Stephen leaned into me and conspiratorially whispered, "Darling, I think your father may have been gay." I had joked before with them that Earl might be a touch light in the huaraches. In fact, a couple of years after Mom died, Michael and I saw the movie Beginners, about a 70-something father who comes out to his son in a bolt of chiffon lightning after the mother dies. Michael turned to me. "Earl?" After the movie, I fantasized about Dad coming out to me. After almost becoming a priest, he married Mom late in life after a thin string of platonic girlfriends and one fishing trip in Acapulco with his best friend. I was convinced that he was gay based on a mountain of circumstantial evidence, but no smoking dick. He long ago gave me his acceptance for my homosexuality. But did he pass his on to me? When Dad caught me with those men on the beach, he wore a yellow polo shirt and plaid swimming trunks. That was 20 years after his fishing trip, probably when he picked up Roberto of Acapulco. The Mexican sun uncovered not just my homosexuality and his instant recognition, maybe even a mirror reflection, but of our secret language. He knew what he just witnessed. I understood what I was. I knew that he understood. We intuitively realized that it was not only our secret, but a secret we'd never discuss. I couldn't speak. All he could say was, "You need to be more careful." And after a silent stroll on the beach, "Come on, We need to get back to your mother. Back to safety. As I sauntered about the party with the same joie de vivre as Earl, I wondered if, like his sexuality, Dad ever actually wore Roberto of Acapulco, or merely tried it on.
John Kenny is the best-selling author of 3 novels and 4 books of alleged poetry, including Talk to Me, Love Poems for Married People, Love Poems for People with Children, and Love Poems for Anxious People. His first novel, Truth in Advertising, won the Thurber Prize for American Humor, and his new novel is called I See You've Called In Dead. John is a longtime contributor to the New Yorker magazine's Shouts and Murmurs and lives in Larchmont, New York with his wife Lissa, a therapist, and their 2 children whose names he says currently escape him. John joins us now to share a story called 74 Words about a very short story that just might be his most vital inheritance. I'm pleased to welcome to our Writers Read stage for the first time, writer John Kenny.
I'm not supposed to be writing this. It's the fall of 2025, and I'm supposed to be writing a new book. It's supposed to be about a failed middle-aged novelist who has no friends. My editor said, "Write what you know." I'm a few thousand words in, and although I don't have a plot, an ending, or believable characters, I feel I'm in a good place. Except I've also been writing this kind of memoir about my mother. Is it a good idea? Unlikely if the reaction from my editor to a few text messages explaining my hope to write a humorless memoir about my long-dead mother is any indication. Editor: Oh, okay, wow. Well, I think what readers want from you, assuming they want anything, is sort of a lost middle-aged male who's largely friendless or single or divorced or, maybe learns how to be a grown-up finally as an adult male, but with funny parts. I can't emphasize the funny parts enough. Me, that's this. Editor: Is it? Me, yes. I'm the lost middle-aged male who's largely friendless and trying to grow up, except we add his dead mother. Editor: Please tell me you're still taking the Lexapro, Wellbutrin, and Ativan. I am. I had spent the previous 4 years working on a novel about death, about an obituary writer who was afraid to live. In the book, we learn that the main character's mother died when he was young, and that her obituary was only 74 words long. He didn't understand how this handful of words adequately told her story. I borrowed that from my own life. I was 12 when I read my mother's obituary in the Boston Globe, the day after she died suddenly at age 49. I still have it, the now sepia cutout from page 37. A small pixelated photo accompanies the 74 lifeless words. It didn't come close to capturing the person I knew, this woman who gave birth to 6 sons over 14 years and raised them, fed them, clothed them on my father's firefighter salary. This woman who shopped for groceries and made meals, who did endless laundry and dishes despite severe eczema on her hands, the hot water causing her skin to crack, so she wore Palmolive rubber gloves during the day. This woman who loved nothing more than to entertain, to have her friends over, to sit at the small dining room table, eat and talk, maybe light up a parliament after dinner, inhale, feel the buzzy jolt of the nicotine, the night still young. Where was that in the obituary? Where was her story, the one where she lived in a 1,300 square foot house with 7 males, 1 bathroom, 1 half, 1 shower, so little space for her things, for hair curlers and Pond's cold cream. Where was the mention of pre-dawn drives to hockey practices during Boston winters, open-air rinks, waiting and watching her boys the whole time? Where was the mention of the dead quiet in the house the day it happened, the husband and 6 sons sitting there, unbelieving not possible, blind to their new reality, a new world that felt unlikely to hold without her? Nostalgia can be a dangerous thing, that longing to go home to a place that no longer exists. The point is not to canonize my mother or to paint some trite portrait of saintliness. She was just an ordinary person. She won no awards, built no company, left no fortune. She didn't go to college. She never made partner. She didn't do much in her life if measured by 21st century markers. Places traveled, careers undertaken, wealth amassed. She was no one. She was the center of the world. What remains is her story to tell, a lot more than 74 words. Perhaps that's my inheritance. I'm not supposed to be writing this, but I can't seem to stop.
Deborah Freed lives in Greenwich Village and has spent 25 years as an advertising creative director. She is most proud of launching Dove's award-winning Campaign for Real Beauty, though her portfolio spans the gamut from Hellmann's Mayonnaise to Tiffany & Company. A New York Times published writer, Deborah also maintains a Substack where she explores, quote, clothing and life, but not in that order. While the theme of inheritance might suggest family heirlooms or jewelry, Deborah's mind went elsewhere, and her story focuses instead on her former advertising partner, Lou, who left her with a wealth of smiles and one very specific phrase that she just cannot shake. Here now to close Act 1 with her piece, Sorry Ducks, please welcome writer Deborah Freed.
Some people leave baubles or paintings behind. Lou, my old advertising partner, left 3 words: fuck a duck. When I use it, the phrase is laughable, but in Lou's hands, it was poetry. With it, he expressed everything from joy to wonder to heartache. When our favorite coffee shop closed, he stood on the sidewalk, muttering, fuck a duck, so sadly. I could only pat his back. One December day, we stood at Lou's office mirror, elbowing each other out of the way as I blotted my lipstick and he combed his mustache. Lou had a beautiful head of silver hair, black eyebrows, and a mustache the colors of both, as if they had mated and produced a perfect child. He would have been movie star handsome if he had been tall. Instead, he was compelling, and at this moment, oddly quiet. What's up? I asked, eyeing his reflection. Joan has a little fucking thing. He twisted his wedding ring. They gotta remove it. He sniffed, as if inspecting the air. Anyway, the doctor says it's simple. He waved my concern away, and we stepped out for lunch. I needed a present for my boyfriend, and Lou appointed himself chief advisor. He shook his head as I chose a scarf. Nobody likes fucking paisley. It's a fact. Look it up, Deborah. I bought it anyway, and a couple of ducks paid the price as we stood at the register. Back outside, we joined the crowd in front of Saks Christmas windows and found ourselves humming along to the Little Drummer Boy. Lou smiled quietly, watching a figurine couple drink hot chocolate. He whispered, "Fuck a duck," softly, like a prayer, then grabbed my arm and jerked his head toward the building across the street. "Let's go to St. Patrick's, pal." As we climbed the stairs, I mentioned that I had never been inside. "You've never been to St. Patrick's," he said, shaking his head. Lou's habit of repeating what I had just said to underline its ludicrousness both annoyed and amused me. "Sometimes you really kill me, pal." He fucked a duck under his breath as we reached the top step. We entered to a hush that was immediate and mighty. We stood in the back. A young homeless guy crossed himself, then slid into a pew. He nodded to a businessman who returned the gesture with a small smile. Strangers outside, brothers in here. I glanced to see if Lou noticed, but he was gazing to his left. "Let me show you the candles," he said, leading me to a side table. "See, you put a little money in here," he said softly. He stuck a few bills in the box. And then, well, this is for Joan. He lit a match. As he held it to a candle, a tear landed on his mustache, where it quivered like a drop of mercury. "She has a brain tumor," he said, looking at the flame. He met my eyes, and we stood quietly, surrounded by flickers of hope and desperation. Eventually, Joan recovered, and our agency was bought by a bigger one, and I got a new job. Lou and I talked when we could, but he started to cough and sometimes had to hang up because he had trouble breathing. Pulmonary fibrosis will do that to a person. In the end, it kicked Lou's fucking ass. His wake was tearful. His mustache was well combed. He would have approved. Without him, the world is way too polite. I hear myself say "fuck a duck" when the remote doesn't work and when it rains, and every April 15th when I wish I could say happy birthday to Lou. I miss him, as does everyone who knew him, except maybe the ducks.
Writers Read gives voice to the stories that bind us. And in a publishing environment where it is often difficult to break through or experience new voices, we are a federally recognized 501c3 nonprofit literary arts organization with a mission to create performance opportunities for writers, which we do at events like this one, gathering to share stories and conversation and wine, which are things that engage and nourish us all. I'm proud of the work that our small volunteer team is doing and the work that we've presented for over a decade on our stage and our podcast and in our beautiful new hardcover book. Well Said, Well Read collects over 60 of my favorite stories from our first decade. And like the work that you're hearing today, they are all beautifully crafted, just two-page stories that are both moving and hilarious. And they're all just 2 pages, which makes this the perfect like bedside or nightstand companion. And the book is laid out in a way that the way you experience the show. There's a pause, you meet the writer, and then each story is complete on a 2-page spread. So if you can resist the temptation to consume this like a bag of chips, you've got 2 months of bedtime stories right here in this book. I'm really so proud of it, and it truly is the perfect gift for any reader in your life. You go into someone's house for dinner, oh, a bottle of wine, yawn, you could give them a great little book. You know, it's a terrific thing. And like I should also say, and by the way, they're great to read aloud at bedtime. If you have a partner, they're designed to be read aloud. We also have a second book that we released just 2 weeks ago, a collaboration with Bellevue Literary Review, which was celebrating its 25th anniversary of publication. We had a show in New York called Body Language, true stories of illness, recovery, and discovery, The one frustration I have about this whole enterprise is the inability to present all of the good work that we receive. We received 144 submissions for 12 slots. We presented 15 on stage, but there are 36 stories in this book. They're really terrific. And I will say that they are available here today at a special show-only price that I simply can't announce to our YouTube viewers. But you're just going to have to see when you go to the reception there. But and we brought enough for everyone to take home 6. So, and full disclosure, I stole that line from my friend, the writer Annabelle Monahan, who wishes she could be here today. We're going to pause now for about a 15-minute leg stretch and a trip to the loo. And when you hear this bell, that is your signal to return to your seat. And as some of you know, this is the very bell I grew up with, and that our mother, and my sister is here in the house, our mother called us to dinner with this bell. I'm the youngest of 6. And if she had to ring this bell twice or 3 times, it was going to be big trouble. So I'm just saying, listen for the bell. Come on back for a great second half. There's 2 bathrooms. There's one right here. There's a trip around and upstairs. You're welcome to both. I'm Ed McCann. This Thank you, and welcome back to the second half of Inheritance here at St. John's Church in Kingston, New York. Before we bring up the next writer, I want to express my sincere gratitude and thanks from our entire board to a recent transformative grant from the Amy P. Goldman Foundation in support of our efforts. I also want to thank the wardens, guardians, and default perpetual caretakers here at St. John's, Kingston's own Bob and Lynn Dennison, as well as Brian Silver for making Writers Read so welcome here today, and for helping in so many ways with our first production here in this fantastic space. For their support in helping spread the word about this event on such short notice, thanks to Kit Potter, Kingston's Director of Arts and Cultural Affairs, Sarah Kramer Harrison, Ulster County's Arts and Culture Director, and well-known media personality, professional cheerleader for the Hudson Valley, and force of nature, Nadine Ferraro, host of In the Know with Nadine on Kingston Wire, who's here in the house. Thanks to our marketing committee co-chairs, Allison Gagnano and Deborah Freed, our senior editor, Stephen Lewis, our Writers Read Board President, Sarah Marone, executive producer, Richard Colath, our data analyst and operations specialist, Carol Wood, production director, Kevin O'Connor, and today's rock star interns from SUNY New Paltz, Hayden Norcia, Sophia Gonzalez, and Gavin Murray. You all deserve a round of applause of your own. Kingston's own Charlotte Adamus opens Act 2 of today's Inheritance event. Charlotte began her writing career at the age of 8 with such insightful diary entries as, "Nana gave me Swiss chocolate bars," and, quote, "I am sent upstairs without dinner." But by her mid-20s, she no longer went to bed hungry, thanks to what became a 12-year career as a journalist in the Mid-Hudson Valley, followed by 18 years as a school librarian. After shepherding 2 sons safely to adulthood, she now writes her own true stories, which have appeared in Her Story, Hippocampus, Brevity Blog, and Eat, Darling, Eat. Charlotte volunteers as a social justice advocate, and when she's not writing or tromping through the woods, she's working to find a home for a finished memoir tentatively titled, Who is Your Daddy?, which explores her lifelong pursuit of connection with the father who abandoned her. Today, she shares What My Father Didn't Leave Me, a story of finding a rich legacy in her true artistic roots. Please give a warm welcome to Charlotte Adamus.
Whenever I thought about calling it quits on the father who'd abandoned me before I was born, it was my adoptive father who would advise me to be nice. You never know, he'd say. You might inherit. My adoptive father made a very good living, but the man whose name was on my original birth certificate had become wildly, unimaginably successful. So successful that, according to an article I found when I was in my mid-20s, broke and struggling, he was giving away millions to the needy children of New Jersey. My father had never given a cent to me. Then again, in 1961, when he was 23 and penniless, he had agreed to walk away forever from his brief marriage to my 20-year-old mother in exchange for his financial freedom. The only evidence I had that he had ever even considered me as his progeny was a gold baby shoe charm he gave to my pregnant mother, and my mother eventually gave to me. It's still in its original white box from a jeweler in Kentucky. On the top of the box, my mother had inscribed in her perfect blue penmanship, "The last gift from my first husband." The first time I met my father, I was 29 and pregnant with my first child. And it happened only because I wrote to ask for his medical history. I thought he owed me that much. It was my father who proposed the meeting. The day we had lunch at his yacht club would turn out to be the first of only 3 meetings we would have over the next 30 years. In between, we wrote, and once or twice a year, I received a phone call from him. I was never the one to call. It wasn't just the fear of rejection. It was that I couldn't see myself in him. Still, I searched for myself in his gestures, even convincing myself that my older son's blue eyes were a genetic hand-me-down from him. I was desperate for acclaim, anything to show the world I belonged to his lineage. But to my father, it seemed I would always be a shameful reminder of his failed past. Perhaps that's why the second time I asked to meet his other children, the first time I'd received a simple no, he told me that such a meeting would be disastrous. Disastrous. That was the word that finally broke me. It swallowed up all the years of trying to be a daughter to a man who didn't want me. So, future inheritance be damned. I let go of my father, or the idea of my father. I wrote to let him know there would be no more us. Less than a year later, my origin story unraveled. It didn't happen immediately. It would take 18 months after I spit into a tube and sent it off to 23andMe, just for fun, to figure out that my father, the man I met for the first time at his yacht club, was not my father. My mother would claim to be as surprised as I was. When I eventually met my biological father, I looked again for my reflection. And though I couldn't see myself in him, his cousin remarked that I smiled big and wide, just like my paternal grandmother. It would change the way I looked at myself, as did learning that my sons and I, all creative people, are descended from generations of artists. As for the man whose name appeared on my original birth certificate, he died before I could decide whether he deserved the truth. I suspect he knew all along. His obituary listed the surviving members of his family. I was not among them. His beloved dog, Oliver, however, was duly noted. Needless to say, I didn't inherit his millions, but what I did inherit is priceless. I inherited a story, a true story in which there is no doubt I belong.
David Masello moved to New York City from Evanston, Illinois, and has been a professional writer and editor for over 35 years. His career began at Simon & Schuster, followed by senior editorial roles at Travel and Leisure, Art and Antiques, and Town and Country. He's currently the executive editor of Milieu, a magazine focused on design and architecture. A widely published essayist, poet, and playwright, David has authored 3 books on art and has had work published in the New York Times and Best American Essays. And on Instagram, he shares self-narrated minute-long videos exploring the hidden corners of the cityscape. Returning to our stage today, David explores his identity through inherited links to a grandfather he never knew. Here with Writing a New Story, please welcome David Masello.
There is only scant evidence to suggest that a grandfather of mine was gay. Men who are gay are born that way, and so I wonder where my gene comes from. I never knew my mother's father, a man much older than my grandmother, when he died in 1939 at age 59, my mother then a girl in Chicago. My grandfather Samuel was such a successful businessman that the money he earned well more than a century ago still serves as the foundation of what has sustained our family. In 1922, he took a cruise around the world with his closest friend, a man named Dr. Augustus. My grandfather suffered from a congenital heart condition that would eventually kill him. And according to my mother, he was obsessed about traveling with, always being in the company of Dr. Augustus, his physician. In a journal he kept of that global voyage, he writes about how he and Dr. Augustus were jokingly referred to by fellow travelers and crew when going into dinner as Mr. and Mrs. They were that inseparable, perceived as a couple, though likely not in that way, given the era. Dr. Augustus remained unmarried, and in one photo he's handsome, a man a decade younger than my grandfather. Every winter, too, he and Samuel would board the Dixie Flyer Pullman from Chicago to Miami, where they would spend the season. My mother once mentioned that Samuel had written a collection of short stories based on those Florida sojourns. And in a circa 1920 picture of him on the beach, surrounded by flapper girls and other men, he wears the black tank top, typical then of men's beachwear. Dr. Augustus likely having taken the shot. My grandmother destroyed those stories after Samuel died, and I can guess that they were too risque or told tales about people that reminded my grandmother of her husband's life apart from hers. My grandfather, a Russian Jewish immigrant, was self-made, culturally refined, restless, independent. He bought an architecturally significant prairie-style house on the city's north side, wore bespoke suits. He loved music and performed as a supernumerary, an extra, costumed out of his customary 3-piece houndstooths for productions at the Lyric Opera. In one photo, he appears pensive, assuming a middle-distance gaze, posed with his wife and children in their Chicago garden. He made his living trading at Chicago's stock exchange, housed then in an exemplary Louis Sullivan building demolished in 1974. I inherited a love for all things Chicago, though I lived in the adjacent lakefront suburb of Evanston. As a boy, I tried to save that beautiful building, going door to door with a petition to send to Mayor Daley, who'd ordered the destruction of the early skyscraper, its facade growing with stone foliates. My grandfather occupied daily the trading floor there. He was said to retreat to the stairwells of the stock exchange, where he'd smoke a cigarette, jot in his diaries, all lost except that travel journal. Flights of those stairs, now installed at the Met Museum, link levels of the American wing. And every time I course a flight, grip the mahogany banister patinaed with his hand, pause on a landing, I wonder if I am exactly where he was those decades ago. I have a romantic notion that most gay men have an intrinsic melancholy coursing through them. That even the most beautiful, sought-after young men, if they are at all thoughtful, will know always a sense of exile, that they are somehow apart. For men of my grandfather's era, it's impossible to imagine how they negotiated that otherness. My grandfather and Dr. Augustus traveled the world together, though leaving my grandmother in the house with her children and other relatives who took refuge there during the Depression. While not alone in that house, she was likely lonely for a husband not there, if ever there. The short stories my grandfather wrote may be gone, and for me to write now about a long-deceased man I never knew, I must resort to fiction, only surmising the truth. But I, his grandson, am continuing his story.
After performing in the Broadway chorus of Riverdance, Tess Clarkson traded her dance shoes for a pen. A former New York City dancer and financial lawyer, Tess is now a Missouri-based writer, death doula, and, quote, life optimizer who helps others tackle life's taboos. And her journey from Missouri makes her today's winner of our Longest Commute Award for Tess Clarkson. Tess spent a decade regulating financial markets before sitting with dying strangers as a hospice volunteer, inspired a career shift. She now integrates yoga, astrology, and coaching into her community work and workshops, and her writings appeared in the Washington Post, HuffPost, and AARP. Today, Tess shares Pumpkin Bread, a story about searching for a lost recipe, her mother's only form of affection that ultimately taught her how to nurture herself. Please welcome Tess Clarkson.
What did you do with Mom's recipes? I stared into my dad's empty kitchen drawer as a sudden ache swelled. The prior day, I'd flown from Manhattan to St. Louis, taking a break from my lawyer life to clean my mom's dressers and distribute her belongings as she instructed in the days before she died. She hadn't mentioned her kitchen, and at 36, with no culinary talent, I didn't need her china, silver, or even an inheritance. I needed her one cooking secret that had served as a substitute for her affection. I didn't do anything. My dad, sitting at the table, snapped his newspaper, unaware of the waves of longing that assailed me. I climbed on the counter, looked behind decorations, and searched the pantry for the clear plastic bag in which my mom had kept her recipes. Sweat mixed with dust as I slipped to the floor, tucking my knees into my chest and rocked like a baby, trying to soothe herself. 5 months earlier, a swift cancer battle defeated my mom. In her bedroom, as I held her hand, she died before dawn, without a trace of struggle. A surreal tranquility filled me and carried me each day since with peace. But sitting in front of her cabinets Unable to find her pumpkin bread recipe, tears soaked my lashes. As a child, when I arrived home from school, the scent of pumpkin often lingered in the kitchen, and a loaf of my mom's raisin-filled bread cooled on a worn rack. My mom didn't fold me into her arms and hold me tight. She didn't read stories or play games. Instead, without a word, she lifted a serrated knife, cut several slices, and passed me a plate with 2. As she did loads of laundry for a family of 7, I ate. With each bite, my feet tapped. After I moved to Chicago for college, loneliness overwhelmed me. But then, a package arrived at my dorm. After ripping the brown paper wrapping and lid off an old shoebox, I peeled back the aluminum. The aroma of spices wafted into the air, and part of the gooey top of my mom's bread stuck to the foil. I wiped it clean with a finger and licked it before devouring half the loaf as a warmth filled my belly. My mom continued to send me pumpkin bread in the mail after I relocated to Manhattan for law school. Her brown paper wrapped packages were welcome arrivals while I studied. But once I moved from the dorm to an apartment, her delivery stopped. It was like officially becoming an adult with my own address ended her need to send my childhood treat. She called often, but rarely visited, despite having loved her life in New York in her 20s. I felt a hole widen within me. Seeing how other moms mother their daughters incited an anger I tried to suppress. But still, I trudged forward, creating a life of my own, 900 miles away from my mom. Now, months after burial, I knew my coveted recipe was gone and ached for a mom who had taught me to bake. But that's not the mom I had, or the legacy she left. I wiped my cheeks, pushed myself off the tiled floor, and closed the cabinet doors. It was time for me to go. Before boarding a plane to LaGuardia, I ordered an overpriced coffee at a cafe near my gate. In the display case beside the register, slices of pumpkin bread filled plates next to pastries. "I'll have a chocolate chip cookie," I told the barista. He passed me a paper sleeve containing my snack, and I tucked it into my tote. My toes danced inside my shoes. I'd feed myself on my flight home.
Barbara Kempe has lived in the same Manhattan building for 25 years, and she has strong opinions on everything from Broadway to bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches. While the city often drives her nuts, she loves it fiercely, spending her time bird watching for hawks, knitting, and volunteering to help fellow New Yorkers access the city's iconic architectural and cultural marvels. A single mother, Barbara raised 2 fantastic young adults, plus a dog, 2 cats, 3 hamsters, countless fish, and a Madagascar hissing cockroach in her 2-bedroom apartment. Professionally, she manages copy editors at Yahoo News. Barbara's story explores an inherited lesson, the ability to look past the obvious and find beauty in the unexpected. Here to share Look Left, a journey through grief towards self-trust, please welcome writer Barbara Kempe.
If the
sky is pink when you get up, look left. Robert said this while I was still half asleep, lying on his pillow, staring at what I already knew to be a gorgeous view. The Manhattan and Brooklyn bridges, both at eye level, glowed in the emerging sunlight. He brushed my dark hair off my forehead and kissed my cheek. It was our first time waking up together. He was nervous and probably too religious for me. I was awkward and full of self-doubt. Still, it felt completely natural, as if we had arrived somewhere inevitable. I pulled myself out of his bamboo cotton sheets, and I searched the small, neat room for my clothes. I found my jeans and sweater folded on a chair. I crossed to the window and I did as he instructed, turning my head away from the stately bridges and the glittering financial district skyline, and toward the usually less impressive sight of North Brooklyn. My breath caught in my chest. The East River glowed amethyst. The water seemed to dissolve into the dusty lilac and magenta sky. The sun wobbled, bright, liquid, and yellow, like an enormous egg yolk. Without meaning to, I said, "Wow," out loud, just as Robert appeared behind me with a mug of coffee. Milk, no sugar. I didn't remember telling him how I took it. "You think the bridges are everything," he said, "but in the morning, it's all about Williamsburg." He pulled me into a long kiss. Then I said I needed to go home. I had plans that day, and I also didn't want to stay too long and ruin our perfect moment with my weird, insecure energy. He called a car for me from the phone on the wall of his kitchen. He insisted taking the elevator downstairs with me to see me off, and we kissed again on the sidewalk before I got into the waiting car. Sitting in the back seat of the not brand new, but well-maintained sedan, I watched the sun catch the crystal cross hanging from the rearview mirror and send sparkles all over the ceiling of the car like a tiny religious disco ball. The driver asked me if I was warm enough, and then, without waiting for me to answer, whether I had a husband. "No," I said, but for the first time in my life, it seemed possible. Something in me, in the universe, had shifted, and I knew right then for sure that everything was different. What I didn't know then was that Robert and I would be happily married for almost 12 years, or that he would die at age 43. A couple of decades have passed since that first morning together, and it has not always been easy. I often feel like I missed out on a lot. I was shortchanged, and I grieved the moments we never got to have. But I also gained so much from knowing Robert, and a lot of it I learned that very first morning. Robert appreciated beautiful things, and he wasn't embarrassed about sharing them. He believed in embracing the unexpected and doing what feels right in the moment. Because of him, I have traveled to 6 countries by myself, and I started taking karate at age 50. I learned to trust myself and do what I want to do, regardless of what others think I should be doing. I still live in that building, on a slightly higher floor, but with the same view. And when I wake up and the sky is rose-colored, I get up quickly and I make my own coffee. It's black now because I have to limit dairy. I get up quickly and I pull my now gray-streaked black hair out of my face, and I stand in my often cluttered bedroom, ready to be wowed for the millionth time. Then I do what I was taught all those years ago. I look left.
Deirdre Batson grew up in England, the daughter of Irish parents in a home where handwritten letters, the news and blues, flew back and forth across the Irish Sea. While her early career in neuroscience was defined by lab notebooks and her later years by teaching, a deeper narrative emerged after her mother's death. Deirdre discovered a hidden drawer of letters that revealed a deceptive family history, forever altering her understanding of her parents and her own inheritance. A member of Irish American Writers and Artists and a contributor to the Irish Echo, she joins us now to share a journey that is as difficult as it is hopeful. Here to present her story, The Legacy. Please welcome back writer Deirdre Batson.
It wasn't money, not jewels, art, that mink coat, not humor, misery, addiction, genetic harbingers of doom. It was a drawer full of letters, and I was the daughter who found them. I was the one who read them, and I was the one forever changed by the literary grenades that burned me. Letters were my family lifeline, the connection to relatives and friends in places near and far. Pen and paper more familiar to my mother than the newfangled telephone that mutely decorated the chilly, tiny hallway. Mum plied us with letters when we left home. Her aches and pains, the neighbours' aches and pains, the relatives and friends from Ireland who we hardly knew, aches and pains. Plumbing and critical reports of the cat's behaviour peppered the standard weather reports. Too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry. Often they contained articles, heavily underlined, cut out of the newspapers she and the neighbours read and passed around. Reading and writing were my mother's entertainment. But these letters were different. There were no hiding places in our house, but I hadn't reckoned with a small, narrow drawer next to my mother's bed. She sat on her bed to write her impressively long list of Christmas letters, stamping on the floor over our heads with a shoe heel as a warning to keep the noise down while this task was carried out. Transgressions wrought her wrath, an application of a wooden spoon to the backs of our legs. This was sacred work. I did not know that other letters were written there, that replies to those letters were stored there. Never permitted in that room alone when she was alive, it still felt like trespass. The drawer on my mother's side, unlike that on my father's side, which opened easily to reveal mundane men's toiletries, was stuck. Undeterred, I gave a yank, and out it flew. Vertically arrayed envelopes splaying, and letters bursting up and out like a malevolent jack-in-the-box. Tiny black and white photographs glimpsed, struggling to be noticed, among the words that liberated were calling and calling. We had never seen these letters. I knew that instantly. The unfamiliar pictures were almost all of my mother, laughing, linking arms with friends, the locations, Cork City, a life before wartime marriage and emigration to England. Look at me, they sang. See how happy I was? You who rarely see me laugh, how could you know? I plucked a letter at random, read some, but who were they talking to? I checked the envelope's address and name. What could my mother have written to provoke these responses? The anger, sadness, comfort engendered there spoke of a misery far deeper than the bitterness of the unwilling emigrant. There was deception here, tragedy, my father's name glaring at intervals, my parents' history a firestorm unleashed and scolding the figures we thought we knew. I could not read more, not now, maybe never. I boxed them up and instructed my sister to store them, confident that she, lovingly sentimental, would not open them. I had to return to New York, but I couldn't take them with me, burning with their urgency to be opened, to assail me with their words, a battering ram of emotion. I needed separation, mental and physical, until I felt ready to take on this Herculean task. Why did she leave those letters where she knew we would eventually find them? Why not just burn them? Why did I not burn them then and there in the tiny, inadequate coal fire that passed for heat? Leave our memories as they are, an imperfect, flawed story that we at least believed was true. I heard my mother's voice in that moment of discovery, though. Did she want her story to be told, to be understood finally? Unable to share with her children in life, here was her legacy and my inheritance.
Lynn Edelson has been writing memoir for over 15 years, with work appearing in the Westchester Review, Every Family's Got One, and Writers Read's Voices of Hope Festival with Carnegie Hall. She was recently a finalist for the Her Story Eunice Williams Nonfiction Prize, a distinction dedicated to writing women's stories back into history. A K-drama aficionado, Lynn lives in the Hudson Valley with her husband Michael and their, quote, very bad dog. Lynn is the mother of 2 grown sons, each of whom now have their own kids, which makes Lynn even more certain that neither of them is ever going to buy her a beach house. Today, Lynn explores the tension between culinary innovation and family legacy with her story, Chopped Liver. Please welcome writer Lynn Edelson.
Have you ever tried this? My younger son says. I look at the jelly jar in his hand, filled with what appears to be peanut butter. He sticks a knife into the creamy mixture and smears some onto a cracker. Here, he says. Now, this guy is a cook, and I trust him implicitly when it's anything food related. I put the cracker into my mouth and realize it isn't peanut butter. It's chopped liver pate, he says. I mean, everyone calls chopped liver pate if they're not Jewish, but this stuff really is. The chef started making it at the cafe, he said. Isn't it good? I keep rolling this thing around on my tongue. The flavor is there, but the texture is off. It tastes like chopped liver. I say, it's not bad. I love it, he says with a smile. In all the years I've been around chopped liver, I have never seen it in a jelly jar, nor has it ever been so creamy or so buttery. And there is just something so wrong about that. You do know that Nanny made the best chopped liver around, I tell him. She was known for it. Yeah, you've mentioned it a few times. A few times? I have her handwritten recipe with all the misspellings and crossed out words framed and hung on my kitchen wall. And it's not as though I love chopped liver, and it's not as though I make it more than every few years, but it's in my blood. I think you should make her recipe, I say. This stuff is just weird. He laughs. You know, I knew you'd say that. But it's like peanut butter, I say. It's just not right. You know, I don't think I ever tasted Nanny's chopped liver, he says. She died when he was 8. No self-respecting kid would ever eat that stuff. Or mine, I ask, or yours. My mother died more than 30 years ago, and people still talk about her chopped liver. Cousins I have not heard from for years don't start the conversations with, how are you? How is the family? No. The first sentence usually has to do with her chopped liver, as in, your mother was the kindest person. I still remember her chopped liver. I still have her food grinder, the one I sat next to at the kitchen table as she spooned hard-boiled eggs, sautéed chicken livers, and onions into the opening on the neck. My job was to push them all down with the wooden dowel as they snaked out the other end in swirls. I caught them in the green Pyrex bowl and turned it to make sure it didn't overflow on one side. You ready, she'd ask. When it was done, she stirred the mixture with a large spoon. She added salt, pepper, schmaltz, or butter, and warned me not to tell my Aunt Rita. Aunt Rita only uses margarine, she said. But my liver is better. It was. Want to taste it, she said, holding out the spoon. I would rather die. I shook my head, and she laughed. You know, one day you'll be begging me for this. Everyone does. Not me, I said. It's disgusting. And it was, until it wasn't. Until I ached for her long fingers, spreading some onto a cracker and handing it to me. She used a round-sectioned platter when getting ready to set it out for company. The chopped liver was in the center with black olives, celery spears, and radishes surrounding it. And then came the Ritz crackers, and they had to be Ritz. One year, she tried Triscuits, and no one said a word except Aunt Rita. You know, these are so much better than the Ritz, she said. They weren't. And some things were just supposed to stay the same.
Kathy Curdo teaches at Sarah Lawrence College, Montclair State University, and various writing centers across the metropolitan area. She's the author of Not for Nothing, Glimpses into a Jersey Girlhood, and her bi-weekly column, Words on the Street Revisited, appears in Write or Die magazine. Her piece, Still Cooking Side by Side, was described by the New York Times as a, quote, modern love in miniature, and featured in the anthology, The Best of Tiny Love Stories. Kathy lives in the Hudson Valley, where she finds daily joy tending her own little free library. Closing out our Inheritance show, Kathy draws on her mother's strength to confront her anxieties with the defiant armor of color. Her piece, Little Red and Me, is a micro-memoir and a reimagined fairy tale celebrating personal power. This is writer Kathy Curdo.
As far as I know, Little Red Riding Hood didn't complain when her mother asked her to deliver food to her grandma. She just did it. Maybe it even came naturally to her. Someone isn't feeling well or is hurting, bring food. Invited into the home of a loved one, bring food. I relate. It's what I do too. I get it from my mother. This too I get from her. A little lipstick never killed anyone. Like Little Red, I appreciate a pop of color. I have a waffle weave cotton neck scarf, the same shade of yellow as French's mustard. I wear it in every season. And I once wrote an essay about red shoes. I forget most of what I wrote, except for my thesis. A pair of red shoes can change things, the course of an evening, a mind, a love life. So now on days when nothing makes sense and confusion rules, I follow this recipe. Combine one soft yellow scarf, a pair of ruby red flats, and a handful of dreams about night and curiosities and real humans in love. Mix well, let's sit, enjoy. But then there's the wolf, ready and hungry to deceive, frighten, and intimidate, to trick, to create pain, but mostly to devour. Lipstick might not kill, but wolves do. Why was there only one in Red's story? Don't they travel in packs? In my forest, the one that lives in me, the one that is of the heart, soul, mind variety, and the one that rattles my bones when winds are cold and dark, there is more than one wolf. In my forest, they travel in packs, big, scary ones. They hide behind trees and jump out at me, showing off glistening teeth and their gray, see-through me eyes. Sharp, 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 everywhere. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happened? What if that happened? What if? What if? What if? The wolf pack of what ifs, ready to eat me up, no condiments included. Snap out of it, my mother might say, if she were here. Her brown eyes might widen and her hand might be perched on her hip. There might be a long, hard sigh, the final note of her directive, her body telling me, you're stronger than any wolf pack. And that's what I do. I snap out of it and into the woods with red shoes and a yellow scarf, like ketchup and mustard, like blood and sunshine.
Let's have the writers all come up here. The writers come up, please. So Writers Read was built around events like this one, and it is both humbling and electrifying to spend this kind of curated time with such a fine group of writers, and I'm proud of what a small group of committed, unpaid volunteers continues to build with me. We are at work to scale up and attract more writers, more followers, more stakeholders, more listeners, and to make the work of these talented writers available to an even wider audience. The funds that fuel our work come from you, our friends, and our donors, and your donations are an investment in our mission. So please consider a tax-deductible gift today in any amount. Scanning the code on the green banner in the gallery will take you to the donation page of our website. But another way that you could really help is to take your program home with you. Don't leave it behind. Take your program home, give it to someone else in your life who you think will appreciate what we do, someone who would enjoy a spoken word performance, perhaps someone who'd like to appear on our stage. Pass that along and you will be doing us a great service. Thank you, Kingston, and thank all of you for your open arm welcome you've extended to Writers Read. We simply can't do what we do without your encouragement and support, which is why this round of applause from us is for all of you. Okay. Well, I hope that you will all please stick around for some wine and charcuterie and conversation with the writers and each other on a rainy, drizzly afternoon. I can't imagine a better place to be. And we have one last thing to do, and we even rehearsed this, so hold on.